Hey guys, welcome back. This is Cade, joined by Andrew, and today we are going to be reviewing Godzilla Minus One from 2023. Andrew, what are some of your biggest pros with this movie?
Well, I actually have quite a few because this was one of my favorite movies from 2023. It didn't crack my absolute top three. It got knocked out of the third position at the 11th hour by the Iron Claw, but this was still easily my fourth favorite movie of last year. And well, let's start off with I love the cast of characters in this movie. It sounds like such an easy thing to pull off, but you just fall in love with all the characters in this and you want to see them succeed. Like you got, and again, I'm going to apologize in advance about some of these pronunciations. You got Koichi Shikishima, our protagonist. You can clearly see he's dealing with some serious survivors guilt, some serious PTSD. And over the course of the movie, you want to see him kind of get his redemption and you want to see him end up with his sort of adopted family in his housewife Nariko and their adopted daughter Akiko. I love the boat captain as this kind of still likable and happy, but also very much straight laced kind of moral compass character who kind of gives Shikishima the sort of like smack in the back of the head, like think about what you're doing, think about who you're responsible for, and yeah, it's a very enjoyable whole group of characters. Would you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. The characters in this movie were definitely a pro for me. I enjoyed following the character of Shikishima and seeing how his arc played out throughout the movie. I liked his relationship with Noriko, and I also really liked his interactions with some of the other characters, the boat captain, like you said, and also Kenji. Those were characters I enjoyed following. And you know what I give this movie credit for? When I compare it to some of the other Godzilla movies that we've gotten in recent years, this movie did a much better job with handling the human characters, in my opinion.
It really did because again, and I think this movie benefited from the fact that Godzilla is the bad guy clearly in this movie. Whereas something like, say, the MonsterVerse, which don't get me wrong, I do still love those movies, but the MonsterVerse, obviously, Kong and Godzilla are kind of presented more as like the protectors of Earth. Whereas in this one, Godzilla is clearly the destroyer. So as kind of as a natural result, you're more inclined to feel for and care about the human character.
Yeah, and I think another pro that I do have with this movie is just I really like the overall plot of the movie. I think it definitely kept me invested because I was rooting for the characters, and so that was nice. And I also think that the movie works really well as a sort of reinvention of the original Godzilla. And here's what I mean by that. I know that it's a reboot, and I have seen it been called a sort of remake in some ways, but I'm not sure if I would totally agree that it's a remake. And this is something that we've talked about on the channel before, but yes, the movie does recreate certain aspects from the original, but it tells its own story while doing that, which I really like. And with that, do you think that the movie works better as a reimagining of the original rather than a full-on remake?
I do, and my main reasoning is because a lot of the key themes of the movie are very different than the original. The original was more about dealing with the ideas and the paranoia of a post-nuclear bomb world. This movie the theme is more dealing with the Japan rebuilding from World War One, not just from the A bombs being dropped, but also from the firebombing of Tokyo and just the general destruction of the country and everybody kind of starting from zero again, which is why the movie's called minus one because they're already at zero. Godzilla shows up, makes it worse. Thus, they're at minus one effectively. But so I think that because that main theme is so different, and again dealing with the ideas of rebuilding, starting from zero, and then also some very very serious post-war trauma that's kind of a theme throughout a lot of the characters in this movie is why it is more of a reimagining in my opinion than a full-on remake.
Yeah, I agree. And another pro is definitely just the CGI and the overall design of Godzilla in this movie. I thought the CGI in this movie, especially when talking about how they just brought Godzilla to life, I thought that was incredibly well done. In fact, I would argue that this is one of the best Godzilla designs that we've ever gotten on the big screen. Would you agree?
I would completely agree, actually. I love Godzilla's design in this because it's kind of a cross between his original design way back from the original movie in the 50s to his sort of Shin Godzilla redesign from the mid 2010s, though I don't believe Shin Godzilla was actually released stateside. And then even some elements of like Godzilla 2000. But my favorite detail in this movie is how Godzilla's scales kind of like puff out of his back when he's about to do the atomic breath. It's almost like his body can barely contain the sheer energy of the atomic breath ray. I just think that's a really cool detail. And the fact that the budget for this movie was only $20 million US, which in Hollywood terms, that's basically indie movie budget. And the fact that all of the CGI looks phenomenal. All the detail, there's a lot of detailing, there's a lot of very smooth movements. There's a couple of little scenes where you can tell, like, maybe that could have been tweaked more, but they're very few and far between. And again, the fact that it was done on such a cheap budget just really is phenomenal. Again, the special effects in this movie are phenomenal, and it absolutely deserved best effects at the Academy Awards this year.
Yeah, but I think aside from that, if I had any other pros with this movie, I just want to highlight the action in this film. I think the action is very well done, especially when it comes to all the destruction sequences, like when Godzilla attacks Japan, or all the ocean sections of the movie where we see Godzilla going up against all the ships. The action, I think, is definitely a great achievement in this movie.
Oh yeah, no, the action is phenomenal. It's been a long time since we saw Godzilla just go on a sheer, evil rampage, and they did not disappoint in this one. And that's actually another pro I like to highlight, and that is Godzilla feels like a legitimate global whole insurmountable threat in this movie. From the first time he shows up on screen on Oda Island when he hasn't even been mutated yet, because that's actually another detail I love is that Godzilla's got more of a visible mutation from all the radiation. Because if you look when he's on Oda Island, he's kind of more like a Stegosaurus. He's sort of more bent over, whereas when he's attacking King Tokyo, he's much he's on his back legs. He's much more upright. He's almost you can clearly see there's some changes, but they do a great job in this movie at making Godzilla feel evil. He's freaking ripping train cars apart. He's tacking boats and ripping them in half and throwing them a mile away. He's taking heavy artillery shells from battle cruisers. They make Godzilla seem really scary and really intimidating in this.
And that's exactly what you want from a Godzilla movie. You want Godzilla to feel like this massive threat. So the whole team behind this movie really achieved that. So I give them a lot of credit for it.
Yeah, no, this movie was clearly made by people who A love the Godzilla franchise and B care about it deeply. And yeah, no, just again, as much as I love the MonsterVerse, you can clearly tell Toho really does care about this character and wanted to do him justice.
Absolutely. But tell you what, why don't we get into the few cons that we have with this movie? You want to start?
Yes, I have two main cons. One of them is kind of more just a nitpicky thing. One I think is actually a bigger one. I'll start with the nitpicky one. I'm not a huge fan of Godzilla's roar in this movie. Like Godzilla usually has this sort of more high-pitched, almost like dinosaur shriek sort of roar. This one it just kind of seems more lower pitched and kind of just more just generic monster roar. Again, I know that's really nitpicky, but the first time I heard that, I'm like, I'm not a huge fan of that actually. But again, that's very nitpicky. However, my bigger con is I don't like that Noriko survived.
Yes, that is also my biggest con with the movie. And here's what I mean by that. So, yeah, the movie tries to make it seem like Noriko is dead after Godzilla arrives in Japan and causes all this destruction. Personally, I was never convinced that she was dead, to be honest. Look, for me as an audience member, anytime that I watch a movie and a main character dies, but we don't see it happen on screen, it's just I'm never fully convinced that they are dead for sure. Unless I see evidence that they are gone, or if I see them die at least, then I never really buy that they are actually gone. So when I was watching the movie and it made it seem like she was gone, all I could think was, no, I'm sorry, this sounds really picky, but I don't think that she's actually dead, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and I definitely see where you're coming from. My big issue is it seems to kind of take away from the immediate aftermath because they give her this big dramatic death where she gets wiped out by all of this debris from Godzilla's destruction. And then afterwards, you get this very dramatic, Shikishima just completely breaking down in this just complete guttural scream in slow motion. It's a very dramatic scene, and then the fact that she survives kind of takes away from it, in my opinion. I definitely see where you're coming from, but that was my big issue with it.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, it is my biggest con, but it by no means ruins the movie in any way.
No, again, by no means. Again, this was a great movie, and I also like the fact that they hopefully will be doing a sequel following it because it does end on kind of a cliffhanger.
But yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give this movie?
I know I'm going to get roasted for this because I'm giving this a higher rating than I gave the original, but I'm going to give this a 9. Again, this is a good movie with a great cast of characters. It's got heart, really good action. It's got a great hit Godzilla depiction. It's got great special effects. Yeah, just a very good movie. We need more movies like this.
Yeah, we absolutely do. I think we definitely need more movies like this. I agree, it had so much heart to it. I liked the plot, I liked all the characters, the CGI and action were all great. Godzilla was done so well. So yeah, I think that I will give this movie an 8.5 out of 10. I think it's that good. It was definitely a huge achievement. So yeah, I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram, Threads, and Twitter, and we will see you later.